Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
Hey!
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randy Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
The efforts by a foreign adversary to interfere and undermine our democratic processes and those of our allies pose a serious threat to all Americans. This hearing and others this subcommittee has conducted and will be conducting in the future are an important bipartisan step in understanding the threat and the best ways to confront it going forward. I had 2 in-person meetings and 1 phone call with the White House counsel about Mr. Flynn.
Oh my God.
The first meeting occurred on January 26. I called Don McGhan first thing that morning and told him that I had a very sensitive matter that I needed to discuss with him, that I couldn't talk about it on the phone, and that I needed to come see him. So I told them again that there were a number of press accounts of statements that have been made by the Vice President and other high-ranking White House officials about General Flynn's conduct that we knew to be untrue. We then walked through with Mr. McGhan essentially why we were telling them about this. And the first thing we did was to explain to Mr. McGhan that the underlying conduct that General Flynn had engaged in was problematic in and of itself. Secondly, we told him we felt like the Vice President and others were entitled to know that the information that they were conveying to the American people wasn't true.
How he knew.
We told him the third reason is because we were concerned that the American people had been misled about the underlying conduct and what General Flynn had done. And additionally, that we weren't the only ones that knew all of this, that the Russians also knew about what General Flynn had done. And the Russians also knew that General Flynn had misled the Vice President and others. Because in the media accounts, it was clear from the Vice President and others that they were repeating what General Flynn had told them. And that this was a problem, because not only did we believe that the Russians knew this, but that they likely had proof of this information.
Whoops.
And that created a compromise situation, a situation where the National Security Advisor essentially could be blackmailed by the Russians. Finally, we told them that we were giving them all of this information so that they could take action, the action that they deemed appropriate.
That was to fire you.
I find it enormously disappointing that you somehow vetoed the decision of the Office of Legal Counsel with regard to the lawfulness of the President's order and decided instead that you would countermand the executive order of the President of the United States because you happen to disagree with it as a policy matter.
I looked at this. I made a determination that I believed that it was unlawful. I also thought that it was inconsistent with the principles of the Department of Justice, and I said no.
Russia's influence activities in the run-up to the 2016 election constituted the high water mark of their long-running efforts since the 1960s to disrupt and influence our elections. And I believe they are now emboldened to continue such activities in the future, both here and around the world, and to do so even more intensely.
Oh, that's good news, isn't it, everybody? Yeah, I feel good. Wow, that was really something yesterday. And the more I listen to it, the more you understand, the more you see, the more you... Oh, you know, my favorite... There were a couple of moments that were just irresistible. Did you see the Ted Cruz... Ted Cruz meeting as Lisa Vito? Posse traction. It was, this was the best thing ever because, you know, there were always, there's going to be 2 separate hearings going on with regard to getting Republicans and Democrats together on a committee that's going to hold a hearing. Whoever the witness is that is brought before the hearing, the committee, the subcommittee, whatever, this was a subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee, the Democrats are going to try and deal with the issue at hand, which is that the Trump administration is compromised by the Russian government, and that the Russian government obviously hacked into and affected our elections in 2016. That is the subject matter, but not if you ask a Republican. If you ask a Republican, the subject matter was who leaked to the Washington Post, now necessitating the firing of Michael Flynn, only because the American people found out that Flynn is a Russian agent and also acted as a foreign agent for Turkey, but it was really Russia too, because that Turkish thing was, on the behest of the Russians. However, we digress. And that he neglected to declare the payments that he took when he was going through his security clearance renewal. Of course, it's all Obama's fault that Michael Flynn lied to the Defense Intelligence Agency, who was in charge of renewing his intelligence, his security clearance, that he left out, that he lied on that, security clearance form, that he was paid. He just flat out lied under penalty of perjury on that form. And so, of course, DIA, not the White House, the Defense Intelligence Agency that was renewing his clearance, rubber stamped it, and his clearance was renewed, but it wasn't good enough to be the national security advisor, which is what Clapper testified to yesterday. I'll play you the clip where he says, it's not the same clearance. It's not. We just thought that they would vet him. And apparently they didn't want to. And then the Washington Post came out with an article and they went, oh, crap, we're caught. Let's fire him. Or ask for his resignation because, we don't want to piss off one of our Russian allies, Mike Flynn. And I don't know if you remember this, but Mike Flynn's son, right around December, was also, when they started getting these security briefings, because they were the nominee of the Republican Party, they started becoming eligible for security briefings. Do you remember that Michael Flynn Jr., who was tweeting some of the most heinous stuff? Well, his dad was too. I mean, they were just bizarre people to begin with. But that didn't disqualify him either from getting invited by the Trump team, the Trump campaign, who was now getting security briefings. Didn't disqualify him from, requesting a clearance, a top secret clearance for his freaking son, Mike Flynn Jr. and Mike Pence. Oh, poor Mike Pence. He was forced to go on the TV and tell the American people, well, we're not really going to give him a clearance. I mean, I know he wants one, and I know Trump wants to give him, but I'm here to tell you that I don't. Oh, he looks so pained in this clip too. I don't know if we'll give him a secure. And they were going, but he retweets like white supremacy stuff. I mean, how in the world? Yeah, I don't think we'll give him a security. I mean, this was really an insane period in our lives, and it continues to this minute. But my favorite moment was when Ted Cruz finally met Mona Lisa Vito from My Cousin Vinny. Posi traction, because Chevy didn't make a 327 in 55. The 327 didn't come out until 62, and it wasn't offered in the Bel Air with 4-barrel carb till 64. However, in 1964, the correct ignition timing would be 4 degrees before top dead center. He actually had that moment yesterday. Check this out. This is so good.
The Constitution vests the executive authority in the president.
Yes.
And if an attorney general disagrees with a policy decision of the president, a policy decision that is lawful, does the attorney general have the authority to direct the Department of Justice to defy the president's order?
I don't know whether the attorney general has the authority to do that or not, but I don't think it would be a good idea. And that's not what I did in this case.
Well, are you familiar with 8 U.S.C. Section 1182?
Oh, you arrogant prick.
Right off the top of my head, no.
Well, it is the binding statutory authority for the executive order that you refused to implement and that led to your termination. So it certainly is a relevant and not a terribly obscure statute. By the express text of the statute, it says, quote, whenever the president finds that the entry of any alien or of any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, he may, by proclamation and for such period as he shall deem necessary, suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions he may deem appropriate. Would you agree that that is broad statutory authorization?
I would, and I am familiar with that, and I'm also familiar with an additional provision of the INA that says no person shall receive preference or be discriminated against in issuance of a visa because of race, nationality, or place of birth. That, I believe, was promulgated after the statute that you just quoted. And that's been part of the discussion with the courts with respect to the INA, is whether this more specific statute trumps the first one that you just described. But my concern was not an INA concern here. It rather was a constitutional concern, whether or not this the executive order here violated the Constitution, specifically with the Establishment Clause and equal protection and due process.
The car that made these 2 equal-length tire marks had posi traction. You can't make these tire marks without posi traction, which was not available on the '64 Buick Skylark. Oh, look at that face. Look at him. He has just met Mona Lisa Vito, everybody. Oh, it's about damn time this arrogant man finally met somebody, and it just so happened to be a very, very beautiful woman with a fabulous, soft Southern drawl.
There is no doubt the arguments you laid out are arguments that we can expect litigants to bring, partisan litigants who disagree with the policy decision of the president. I would note on January 27th, 2017, the Department of Justice issued an official legal decision, a determination by the Office of Legal Counsel, that the executive order, and I'll quote from the opinion, the proposed order is approved with respect to form and legality. That's a determination from OLC on January 27th that it was legal. 3 days later, you determined, using your own words, that although OLC had opined on legality, it had not addressed whether it was, quote, wise or just.
And I also, in that same directive, Senator, said that I was not convinced it was lawful. I also made the point that the Office of OLC looks purely at the face of the document, and again, makes a determination as to whether there is some set of circumstances under which some portion of that EO would be enforceable, would be lawful. They importantly do not look outside the face of the document. And in this particular instance, particularly where we were talking about a fundamental issue of religious freedom, not the interpretation of some arcane statute, but religious freedom, it was appropriate for us to look at the intent behind the president's actions, and the intent is laid out in his statements.
Final, very, very brief question.
Mm-hmm.
But wait, there's more. You see where the left tire mark goes up on the curb and the right mark stays even on the pavement? Well, the '64 Buick Skylark had a solid rear axle, so when the left tire would go up on the curve, the right tire would tilt out and ride along its edge. But that didn't happen here. The tire mark stayed flat and even. The car had independent rear suspension. Now, in the 60s, there were only 2 other cars made in America that had posi traction and independent rear suspension and enough power to make these marks. One was the Corvette, which could never be confused with a Buick Skylark, and the other one had the same body length, height, weight, wheelbase, and wheel track as the '64 Skylark, and that was the 1963 Pontiac Tempest, which also came in metallic green.
In the over 200 years of the Department of Justice history, are you aware of any instance in which the Department of Justice has formally approved the legality of a policy and 3 days later the Attorney General has directed the Department not to follow that policy and to defy that policy?
I'm not, but I'm also not aware of a situation where the Office of Legal Counsel was advised not to tell the Attorney General about it until after it was over.
Oh, thank you. You've been a lovely witness. Posi traction. Oh, amazing, amazing. That's what happens when you underestimate somebody's preparedness to testify about legal issues, Ted Cruz. You were shamed. You were shamed. Shamed. And I got to tell you, it was just it was so great to watch. See, yesterday we were producing in real time, and so it was hectic and crazy. I think I earned your respect. I think I earned your money. Is what I did yesterday. I earned it, baby. So give. But you know what? And if you can't, would you just do me a favor? Go to YouTube/Randi Rhodes Show and just subscribe, because we have over 1 million views, and we did add about 600-700 subscribers, but that's a key thing for us. So please do subscribe. It's the YouTube channel /Randi Rhodes Show. Anyway, calm down, people. Just calm down, because nobody in the Trump administration is being blackmailed by the Russians. Absolutely not. It is not happening. Do you know why? Do you know why? Because they're all cooperating openly with the Russians. Oh, that's why Sally Yates had acted with intense urgency She went to the White House 2 times, beginning on January 26th, then again on the 27th. Then he said, McGhan, the White House counsel, he said he wanted to see her evidence. She said, sure, come on over. And when she said, sure, come on over, we'll show you the evidence that we have that clearly shows that Michael Flynn has underlying behavior that is blackmailable. And I know we all thought of the PP tape. I don't know if that's it. I don't know. But that there was underlying conduct that was so disturbing, and that the lies were getting more and more specific and more blackmailable, and that the Russians had proof of this conduct, whatever it was, and that she had gone there urging them to take action, and the action they took was to fire her. That was the action they took. Now, on the 26th, she warns them. On the 27th, she warns them. On the 28th, Michael Flynn is put on an ultra top secret phone call with Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. See, the problem with Sally Yates, she was a holdover from the Obama administration, and she had to go because the people that were doing those jobs, they tended to actually do them. And that wouldn't fly.
Clear for takeoff. Randy Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandyRhodes.com.
Go to RandyRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.